just like me, Shaq. Aiming for I goes click clack. Moving forward, no need to reach back. Tell me where I need to preach at. Tell me where I need to speak at.
All right, man. We're back with another episode of the CROWNEDCAST. Always with me is my brother, Joel Ngulu. How you feeling?
Excellent, man. I'm super excited about this one, man.
Excited, man. We got a incredible entrepreneur, God-fearing man. We actually had the opportunity to connect with who I'm about to introduce from Paul Getter. So shout out to Paul Getter for making incredible connections and networks being expanded. This gentleman is the host of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. He's the CEO of Vodacy. And new to speaking, you're going to see this gentleman all throughout what I think the nation speaking and just talking about his impact in the world and helping people create wealth with passive income, investing on short-term rentals. And so we have the honor to bring to the CROWNEDCAST Mr. Shawn Moore. How you doing today?
I'm doing awesome, guys. What a nice introduction. I appreciate that. That's it's a pleasure to be here. You guys are, I'll talk to you guys any day about anything I told you. So it was awesome to meet you guys in Dallas. Love the mission behind everything you guys are doing. So I appreciate you having me on as a guest.
Hey, we're honored, man. We feel like this is our opportunity to host you and serve you, man. So thank you.
Yeah, man. Shawn, speaking of, you spoke at that event with Paul Getter. It was excellent. It was powerfully, man. That was your testimony. So, man, please don't shy. I really want you to speak on your testimony. You can start how far back you want. You can start elementary school to where you are now, middle school, however you want. But if you can give us your story, how you grew up, how the entrepreneur can take the play, and then please share that testimony that you shared at Paul Getter, please, as well. So.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, Joel. And it's, like you said, we can go back really far. And I think that there are lessons learned all along the way. And I love what you guys are doing. And I've never thought of myself as a religious person, right? But going through the ups and downs that I'll share with you, I always found myself falling back on my knees and praying, right? And looking for the answers and getting those answers, right? And getting the, some clarity and some, being able to say, hey, listen, this is the path we're running down. There's reasons for all of this. And so, we were talking before we hit record that it's not always, it hasn't really always been, easy to talk about and your faith and your belief and Joseph, you said, like as Christians, you're always, you're taught tolerance and humility and everything else, and which are all great. Right. But at the end of the day, sometimes you feel like you're bragging, you feel like you need to be a little more humble. You feel like, but also as we hear other people's story, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to tell mine as we go into it, they can be, it's nice. I know for me to hear somebody else's testimony story is say, I'm not the only one. I'm not alone here, right? It's nice to, have aspirations and dreams and, they're doing the things I want to do and I don't need to feel bad about it, right? And I think that it's, I love, again, what you guys are doing. I'm quite a bit older than both of you and got a lot more gray hair than both of you, but it's, to see, your generation and the young guys just, running with this, I would have been scared to death. And so first, I think you guys are awesome for doing that first and foremost. And, my story started, really, I've been a full-time real estate investor for 25 years. That's all I've ever known. It's all I've ever done. And, outside of, you guys, I know you're a lot closer to your playing years than I was, but I used to play college basketball. And as soon as I got out of that, and that was my identity for 25 years. Right. And, playing sports, playing Division I college basketball, that's what you did and that was my identity forever. And then college, you graduate, it's like, okay, what's next? What's the next step? And for me, I was able to jump into the real estate investing game. And that gave me the opportunity to kind of create a new identity. But with that identity, there's money involved, and we started doing well with it, and we started making money. And it was one of those things that, when you're 24, 25 years old and you start making a lot of money and you think you're a little bit bigger than you may be. And back then that cocky, egotistical kid was, it was kind of getting fed a little bit. Right. And I was thinking I was a little bit maybe bigger and better than I was at that time. And back then it wasn't hard for me to be, like humble, and it was, and those are lessons along the way. Looking back, it's kind of, you like, I'm disappointed in how I was, but I needed to go through that, I think, as well. And I remember going to some of those investment club meetings, not to learn anything, it's to teach or tell everybody how awesome I was, right? How great I was. And ultimately one thing led to another, and things kept going better. And we were hustling and we were grinding and we were doing things and making money. Again, the at the end of the day, all I focused on was not how good of a person I could be, not giving back. It was, what can I do for me along the way, right? And a big part of my 20s was that, and growing this real estate investment side of life. And then we got introduced to the really high end side of life. I was telling you guys about that in Dallas, is starting flying around on private jets, and the people that we worked with and were hanging out with all the time, most of them by their first names. All we have to do is say their first names and you would know who they are. And it was a different side of life. And again, that didn't do me any favors back then, because I was, it was feeding into that, hey, I'm bigger and better than everybody else around. And I was really bulldozing through life. And Teresa and I married my high school sweetheart. So I wasn't, I just so like we're aware, I wasn't like this. I was never a partier, drinker, all that, like, doing any sort of like drugs or drinking or partying. That wasn't me. I was just more, hey, I want to hustle. And I was the hustler, right? I wanted to make some money but I had a really good partner along the way. I met Teresa back when we were 15 years old. I was telling you guys, back in Dallas, she's the only girl I've ever kissed, and a huge part of my life, and helped me stay. Back then she was the good part of me, right? And today she's still the best part of me. But it wasn't that I was like out there just partying or doing anything like you would in your 20s, but I was making good money. And ultimately that money came to an end, right? And it came to an end. And for me, there was a 6-month period where we lost everything, and we lost, and it came to an end because, like, literally the feds came in and locked down computers, locked down, file cabinets, took everything out. We were working at a really high-end resort, and the resort, the principals of the resort got indicted on securities charges. And crazy, right? I mean, it's like, when you want to talk about just literally shutting down overnight, making 7 figures a year to nothing, and living a life like I was making 9 figures a year. It felt like, I mean, I was spending it as fast as I could make it. It was one of those situations where, like, it's my dad's looking at me like, really, you're out of money? How are you out of money 2 months after this happening, when you make the money you made, right? And but it was these lessons and that you have to learn, and those things that life is more than just about ourselves. And I think that I needed to learn that lesson really quick. I still wasn't learning the lesson just from losing, because I played a victim for a long time. But, that's one of the things for me that was a huge lesson, is like my belief now, it's like, personal responsibility, extreme ownership, self-reliance, like making sure that we, whatever bed we're making, we have to sleep in tomorrow. And so I want to make sure that the bed I'm making is the bed I want to sleep in, and the position I want to be in. And as I went through life and I lost stuff, I kind of realized that. Still didn't realize kind of my purpose or what I wanted out of life. And I think that it's important for people maybe like me to know, there's still, like, it's okay to be figuring it out, I guess is what I would say. Right. And saying, hey, listen, there are different things and events in our life that we're going through. And at the time we started making money again, I gave myself a 6-month pity party and decided, okay, I'm going to start making money again. And we started doing real estate again, and we started stacking those dollar bills. And I learned the lesson of not spending it all like I made it, but I still didn't learn the lesson of really what I wanted out of life. And, a huge part of my life now is my family and my kids. And back then, Teresa and I were dealing with infertility, and we were dealing with, the struggles of infertility. And we started saying, hey, we want to have kids. And Teresa and I would have these conversations, and I would say, hey, listen, I don't know if that's in the cards for us. I don't know if that's what I want to do. And you know, there's a few moments through that period that I just remember like they were yesterday, and where, you know, I wanted to have the argument of, hey, mate, this is going to be really expensive. The fertility treatments we were going through were really, really expensive. The things that we were trying were still, you know, they were experimental. So insurances didn't cover them. And you had to, you know, they came with big price tags at the time. We had to write $100,000 check to even try to have kids. And they told us it was going to have a 20% chance of working. Yeah. And back then I was like, okay, that's my sign. I'm out. Right. Luckily, Teresa saw it as a different sign. She looked at it and says, 20% chance, we're doing it, right? She was
so you're telling me there's a chance.
So they're telling me there's a chance. And it was, you know, and I can look back on it now, and it is embarrassing to say that I didn't want, you know, or I was willing to give up on kids. It's not that I didn't want kids. I was willing to give up on it because of money. Because of money. I mean, that's how embarrassing is that I was willing to give up on that part of life. And now, I mean, knowing what I know now, it's, you know, every time, you know, when I'm telling the story, it's like, okay, you got to kind of pause and think, how embarrassing is that? You get emotional even thinking that that is where my head was at, but it was at the time. Everything was $1, you know, it had $1 cost to it. And I was like, that's, you know, I'm figuring out budgeting. I'm figuring out savings. Now this is coming into play. And we ended up doing you know, long story short, I didn't have the words in me to argue with Teresa. Like I literally, like when you talk about being, you know, faith-based entrepreneurs and having a belief system, that was probably the first time in my life that I felt, you know, the power of the Holy Spirit saying, hey, listen, this isn't what we're going to do. I literally couldn't get the words out to say, I don't want to do this. And I had the entire presentation plan. I had everything out there. Right. And it was, I couldn't say it. And, you know, for somebody that does not go to church every Sunday, I grew up a Catholic kid, and I was an altar boy. I went through all that, but I was going through the motions. I didn't really dive into the whole thing, and started it's interesting because, you know, I do, like, I pray for stuff, but I was the type of guy that would pray for stuff when I needed something, right? I was the guy that was like, hey, I'm having a hard time, so let me drop to my knees and pray. I wasn't the guy that would pray with gratitude and thankfulness and, you know, and all that stuff. And so, you know, at that time in my life, I couldn't get the words out. And it's like, okay, when I look back, I think, what did I do to deserve that? You know, the Holy Spirit that's my belief now, is the Holy Spirit was saying, hey, listen, you I've got a different plan for you, right? God's got a different plan, and we're going to do this. And we went through this process, and we were blessed with 2 healthy babies, Wyatt and Grace. And it was, that's when, for me, everything changed. And when you want to talk about, you know, how we live our lives now and the things of, you know, one, how can I be an example? Nothing, you know, I love making money. I love being able to provide. I love the good things that come with having money. That event in my life, and again, is when I look back at it, probably my first real experience of there's no explanation other than believing, right? To me, there wasn't any other explanation that. So I look back and say, okay, there's something real to this. And for me, we started to, like, every single night with my kids, we pray every night together. Our prayers are maybe different than other people's prayers, but our prayers are all about gratitude, you know, and we all take a chance to pray together. So every night as a family, we pray together, and everybody says what they're grateful for, who we can, you know, send blessings to. We don't ask for stuff in our prayers. And up until I had kids, every prayer I ever said was asking for stuff, right? And now it revolves around how grateful we are for everything we have in our lives, the challenges that we can learn from, you know, the blessings that have been given to us, the people in our lives, you know, the messages that we can receive. Those things are the things that we pray about. And it's interesting, since the kids have been born, my little kids, and when they were born, Teresa and I started doing that. We'd never prayed together, ever. We just naturally, it's not even like we said to each other, we're going to start praying together. we just both knew that this was going to be the new path for us. And we started doing that. Like when I'm out of town, I call them on the phone every night before bed, and we do our family prayer. If I'm, hunting and I'm on the road, and I find service that we can have our family prayer. And it's very interesting because it was not something that, I know we talked, I'm diving in more to this than we dove into in Dallas, but it was an interesting turning point for us as who I would believe is a kind of a non-religious person, but a very faithful and believing person. I don't know if that makes any sense, right?
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And so, we ended up, we had White and Grace, we ended up continuing to understand how to run a business and being able to wrap that into our business and wrap into our new way of doing things. And it's funny how immediately things started to accelerate, because there was a point as well where I was always trying to impress people because it was about me. What do they think of me? How can I impress them about me? And it turned to a point of how can we serve people and how can we make them better? How can we help or share our view of the world and maybe inspire or lead by example, different things like that. And it was crazy how much more we got with our businesses, how many more people wanted to be, a part of the journey we were on, and how many more people we were able to help. And, one thing led to another, and we built, a bigger real estate empire than we've ever had, but also built a company helping people do that, almost by accident, by just being able to share our story and talk to people. And it's interesting when you mention, some people just, they weren't even interested in real estate investing, but they heard our story and they're like, this is the person that we want to talk to. And at that point, when I had that flip, it's almost like a switch flipped within me of what was important, but also what I cared about, like as far as what people thought of me, what they didn't think of me. And I realized that most people they're not judging us. They're thinking about how can I look at your story and look at it through my lens, right? And what does that mean, or how does that help me? And that's how most of us listen to stories, is we relate to them. And when we became kind of that person, like now people just say, hey, Shawn, it was, I was drawn to you just because, you're not perfectly polished. You're not you're not the most articulate guy out there. You're not, the best guy on social media, whatever it is, but I felt like you were honest. I felt like I could trust you. And that's a real honor to me when people say that, especially because I've always felt like I was a good person trying to do well, but I was trying to do well for me. And, and now it's a little different, and it's pretty fun to be able to help other people.
Yeah, that's the greatest gift right there. I think that's the pinnacle, right? Like that level 5 leadership.
Right.
Man, I have questions just from that. I'm like, man, I got like 4 or 5 questions already. But thank you for sharing that, because that is impactful. In the beginning, you talked about identity. First off, as a basketball player, right, doing that for 24 years, and that career ended. Like Joel and I, we both can relate to that in a deep way, because we went that same path. That sport ended for us. You do that. Like Joel and I, we grew up together, right? Like we would go to school and then we would meet at the park and play basketball till like it's dark, and then we go home and then do the same thing over and over again. So like we ate, slept, drank basketball. But then you talked about, making like 7 figures a year, doing really well, living high lifestyle, and all of it being gone in like overnight. Talk about that in relation to your identity, right? Because you're like the big man on campus, right? For lack of a better term, right? Like you're really well. You're hanging with, high end people, right? Traveling on private jets. It ends one day to the next. What did that do for you? Like as a man, as a leader of your household?
Yeah, it's great. One, what led to it is trying to fill that identity gap with stuff like looking good, right? For example, like I was like, even in basketball, you're like, okay, you're on a great team, you're in the starting lineup, and this is how you're doing, you're averaging so many points. Like we can do certain things to stand out and have, value tied to our identity. We get into the business world, we start tying our identity now to impressing other people with like what we had, how I dressed, how we would show up in our cars, what vehicles we had, all those different things. When you lose everything, it is, your identity feels like it's gone, and you go into this, it's this, when people operate on faith, they're operating in like there's hope, and there's better out there, and you're looking at the positive opportunities and the things that are going on. When you operate out of fear, you're looking at all the negative things. And when you lose that stuff, that's where you're in the operating out of fear section of your life, of saying, this isn't going to work out. I don't trust this. It's a very, like an environment that just doesn't breed anything really good coming out of it, and it's just a downward spiral. You're just honestly, you're thinking what you didn't do, what you should have done, better, all the things, and when we focus on all those negative things, and we focus on all the, all the fear-based thoughts that we have, it's not that we don't ever get scared when you're successful, but when you focus there and you stay there and you park in that lane, it becomes just this downward spiral that's really hard to get out of. That's where depression sets in. I'm not naturally a depressed person, but I know what depression feels like from that stage in my life. And so I have empathy for people that are there, and you want to see them get out of it. Right. And that's where having a belief in something. Right. And like one of the things when I talk about Teresa, and I'm so grateful for, is she really encourages me to live a life saying, I'm glad I did instead of I wish I had, but she's always believed in me. And sometimes when you can turn to, a church, or just the faith in a higher power, and whatever that is that you believe, obviously we're all Christians, and we have something that gives us that, somebody that is there to believe in us, but also that we have the faith that there's a better tomorrow. And you don't get stuck in that, okay, this is what's tied to my identity, and understanding that we have to have something that is tied to our identity that we can control, and that has a more solid foundation than stuff, right? Athletes go through the identity crisis a lot, right? I mean, it's very common for athletes because they're at the top of their game, and then all of a sudden, father time kicks in, and they can't play like they used to, and there's nothing they can do about it. And it's hard to reinvent themselves. And I always think it's easy to reinvent yourself when your back's against the wall, when the cards are, you're down in the dumps, there's nowhere to go but up. Right. Yeah. And you can say, hey, listen, like there's so many stories like mine and rags to riches stories for a reason, because it's actually, in my opinion, easiest to do that. I'll tell you what's the hardest is trying to get somebody that's comfortable and things are going well to get better, and try to say, hey, listen, because comfort is the killer of all growth. And that's a really hard position, I think, to step out of. I would have never stepped out of it when I was making money. I had to lose everything. I had to have things go wrong in order for me to understand what was more important, and try to build a different identity. And sometimes you learn from it, sometimes you don't. Luckily for me, I was able to, take some of those things and learn from them.
Yeah. So are you a natural optimist? Like, are you? Yeah. Like,
yes. And so
you always look for the light rather than you just stay in the dark.
And I think that that's always served me well. And I think that it is, it's, if you can think about tomorrow, I talk to my mom about this. My mom's going through cancer right now and dealing with cancer. And my mom's not a natural optimist. And we talk about this all the time because I don't worry about stuff. I just don't see the point in it. I don't get it. I'm not a worrier. And so sometimes it's hard for me to relate to somebody that is a natural worrier. And so, but I always say, listen, if let's say you have a week to live. If you know you have a week to live, what are you really going to do with this week? Like, if you know for sure I've got 1 week left, what are you going to do? Are we going to cry about it? Are we going to worry about it? Are we going to, think of all the things that aren't fair in our life that we wish we would have done different? No, I'm going to take the week and I'm going to do all the things that are important to me. I'm going to hug the people that I love. I'm going to tell the people that I love them. Right. I'm going to do the things that are impactful. And so I always talk to my mom and said, just take it a week at a time. Say you have a week, you have this week. If you get next week, it's a bonus. So live your life like it's a bonus every single day. Yeah. And that is helpful for her because she's a natural worrier, right? I'm not a natural worrier. I do look and say, hey, listen, things are going to happen, and there's going to be tough times, and there's going to be dragons around corners, and we're going to have to fight those dragons, even though we don't want to. And we, that's just life, right? We're going to have that. Everybody does. And it's how we respond to those challenges that are ultimately how we're going to be defined, right? And I think that for me, luckily, I'm not a natural worrier. I am a natural optimist. I think I can fight every battle. I think I can handle those dragons, right? And I'm like, hey, listen, it's like a badge of honor to be able to go through something hard and then look at the other side of it and say, I did that. And so I wish I had better advice for somebody that has had to overcome the worry, the doubts, but I really don't typically do that.
Yeah, I'm the same exact way, Shawn. Like, I am not a worrier. I have a strong sense of faith. I also believe in action too. So most problems can be solved. You just have to look for the solution.
Yeah.
There's only two things you can change in this life, and it's your attitudes and your actions. That's the only thing. And so when I understood that at a young age, I was like, that's all I can change. So I can't worry about anything else other than those two things. But what got you to that mindset? Because there's sometimes I'm around other people and I'm like, how am I not a worrier? Like, to develop that mindset is like, you just kind of arrive there. You develop it along the way, but you arrive there and you're like, oh, wow, most people don't think this way. How do you feel like you personally develop that mindset of just not being a worrier, looking for the light, being optimistic, looking for that next day?
Yeah, I wish I knew exactly how and when it happened. I think looking back, I think that there is the people who are natural worriers, I think, take a lot less action. They take a lot less chances. And so if I was trying to develop a skill set of being, resilient and looking for the best and not worrying so much about whether it works out or doesn't work out, I would say just take more action. As athletes, we're used to messing up.
Yeah.
We grew up, that, like, we know that, hey, listen, we had to work hard to make a starting five when we were this big, right? And we've always had to work for stuff. I think that's why a lot of athletes are good entrepreneurs, and because they had to take chances. They had to put themselves out there. They had to work really hard and get told no and get cut from teams and maybe not be able to make a shot or two or whatever they're going through. And I think that that is a way to build the skill set, is just to put yourself out there and realize the worst case scenario is really usually not that scary. And I think when you understand that, you naturally don't worry too much. You're naturally like, hey, listen, I'm okay if, with the worst case scenario, but I'm not going to focus on it, because I also know, where focus goes, action goes. And I want to take action toward the positive side of life. I want to take action toward the things that I can, change and have an influence on, not the things that I'm not, or the things that I don't want to have an influence on. I don't focus on it. I just try to put it out of my mind.
Man, that's so good.
Yeah.
So good.
That's good. I mean, Joe, you kind of took my question was going to go off of that, because it was like, man, is this something you're competitive? Was it something that, like, you grew up with siblings? Is that the reason why you got competitive? Because, like, how was your upbringing that made you like that? Like, for me, I had hard parents. I was the middle of 5 kids, fresh off the boat. And so my back been against the wall since I was born, man. The system was against me, and you just got to persevere. So that my competitive comes from that. But also, I'm the middle child, man. I'm the left out one. So I'm always fighting for attention, fighting to get that. And that's where my competitive comes from. But for you, did you grow up with siblings? Was there something like your parents?
I had three siblings. I'm the oldest. And so I was always the one that was kind of setting the bar and trying to live up to expectations, right? Like, I graduated valedictorian. I didn't have an A- my whole, my whole school career. I was really naturally competitive, but I just didn't want to, disappoint my parents. And my mom was valedictorian. She was like a very academic type of a person. So it started, there, right? My mom is also a very religious person. I think it's very interesting because, like, my mom, she naturally is not optimistic, but she's very, God has a plan for me. It's going to be fine. It's going to work out. But she also says, I wonder how God will let this happen to me. I wonder why I'm so healthy. Why would this happen to me? I go, like, she goes, she's a devout Catholic, goes to mass every single day. And she also is you know, and I always have to remind her, I'm like, Mom, listen, you know, when you say, you know, I think it's going to be okay, but why did it happen? That's you're focusing still on that negative side of life. And so I don't know, like, because my parents are, my dad's an entrepreneur. My mom was just, you know, a really hard worker in the corporate world, very academic type of a person. And for me, I didn't want to disappoint them. I was always the kid that I was gonna show up on time. I was gonna put in the work. I was gonna put in the effort, and it was always just a competitive nature of me to say I want to be the best. I want to be the guy that is at the top of the class, on the top of the stat sheets in basketball, whatever it is. And I would put in the time, and I was just willing to put in the effort. I wasn't always the most naturally gifted. I wasn't the smartest person in any room, but I would just put in the effort and the time. And I started learning at an early age that you can beat a lot of people just doing that.
Man, just by doing that, just by being a little bit more excellent. Like the bar is very low. So you just got to put a little bit more energy and effort, and then you'll shine and stand out in almost every aspect of life.
Yeah. Just show up, man. Just show up.
Yeah. Yeah, right there. Yeah. Just showing up. My goodness. Right.
Yeah. But even like, I know that you guys have a lot of entrepreneurs listening to the show. I know that for me, like, just like, while we're on the topic of just showing up, like, just show up and do something. Like, when days you're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know when my next sale is going to come in. I don't know how we're going to, you know, do this. If you just literally show up every single day and pick 2 or 3 things that you take action on, it is crazy how that will snowball into, you know, different things that you're working on, different opportunities that present themselves. And sometimes in my, and I'm using my mom as an example a lot, because we talk every single day, but I always tell her, listen, go do this, this, and this today. And when she takes action, she gets out of that mindset of all the things that aren't going right to, I'm just taking action. I don't have time to think about the things that are going wrong. I'm just thinking about moving forward. And ultimately, it kind of gets you out of that rut. And entrepreneurs see that all the time, because you're exactly right, Joseph. The bar is actually really, really low. And it is actually not that hard to stand out in the crowds right now.
Exactly. But the problem is the bar is low, but there's so many people that are hanging out at that bar. And
Right.
it's a crowded place. And you're like,
It is.
everybody looks like they're doing so well. And that's false, you know?
Yeah.
I want to switch gears here in just a second and go more towards like building passive wealth. But I wanted to ask you a question about parenting, right? You know, by the way, praise God for having money, right? Because if you were not set up financially, you wouldn't have kids, right? You hear so often, and I think, you know, believers are probably the head group that always talks negative about money, right?
Yeah.
Money's a tool. They say, oh, you know, money's not everything. Money can't bring you happiness. But $100,000 check to have some kids that bring you happiness. I mean, that's what's better than that. That's a whole different type of love. So amen for that. But being an entrepreneur and going through the ups and the downs, how are you raising your kids? I'm always curious to hear about how high-level entrepreneurs are raising their kids, because you understand what school gets you. And I'm not saying school is a horrible thing by any means, but it doesn't set you up for the world. I'm curious how you and your wife are raising your kids and like preparing their mindset.
Yeah, it's and I will, full disclosure, the jury's still out, right? My kids are 13 years old, and so tell me if I was a good parent in 40 years, right?
Exactly.
But it's you know, we do take that responsibility really serious. Our view of this world is a little different than other people's, based on our experiences, what we're doing. Our kids have always been homeschooled. We don't put them in the school system. We're not a huge, I know that that's not an option for a lot of people, and but in our financial situation, it's we've got the resources to be able to do that. Teresa is amazing at as a stay-at-home mom. She's the CEO of the household, and really, you know, Teresa and I live a very traditional husband and wife, man, woman type of a relationship. And I know that's not as popular today as it maybe was back in the day, but that's how we live. And it is kind of, that's our view of the world. And so she is 100% the CEO of the household. and the kids. And we have a view of that. We want, one of the things that we did not like, and this is very maybe surprising. I don't know if it's kind of surprising to other people in our world, that one of the things we didn't like, because I don't belong to any church that we go to on a regular basis, but we are very big believers, and we believe in, and talk about our faith in our household and everything else. It's not something that's taught in schools either. And so there's a lot of curriculum that you can get that is Christian-based curriculum that you can teach your kids. And we wanted them to be exposed to that early on, especially because we don't go to church and we're believers. We needed to have that exposure for them. And we also are, we're very big believers in, the history, American history, all of that stuff. And a lot of that is getting erased, the good, the bad, the ugly. If it was ugly, they want to say it didn't happen. And I'm not a believer of that. I say, hey, listen, you show them the bad things that people did, and we learn from it. Right. And we don't act like it didn't. And so when it comes to schooling, we've been homeschooling our kids from the very beginning. We're big believers on that. There's another aspect of schooling that is not taught a lot in school, and that's finances, personal finance. We're big. We love Dave Ramsey. And as a real estate investor, people are like, how are you huge on Dave Ramsey? I'm like, Ramsey is probably one of the smartest guys when it comes to finances that I know for a lot of people. And if they knew him and his and he's another big faith-based entrepreneur, right? Huge. He's got a big testimony and has built a nice business, and we love his aspect. So we have him in our curriculum. Our kids are part of his finance programs. And so we're trying to teach them the things that we think are important. And again, our view of the world is that it's a little too digital. And so like our kids are getting out and they, they're supposed to, build their businesses. They communicate via, phones and not text messages and face-to-face meetings. And so we try to put them in those types of positions as well to be able to do that. And it's been really fun. When they come to our events, I host live events and do stuff. And we always are, one of the biggest compliments you can ever get as a parent is, when somebody says how great your kids were, how well they communicated, how respectful they were. Those things are very important. You guys grew up in the South and down in Texas. I love it because everybody says sir and ma'am, and it's and there's certain areas of the country that are, you go down south in the Bible Belt and stuff, it's very respectful. You get into other areas, it's not so much. And we have the opportunity to travel to a lot of different areas. And it is very obvious when you talk to kids that grew up certain ways and you judge their parents. As a parent, you start to judge their parents really, maybe more than we should at times. But we also, we realize that too. And it's important for us to make sure that they're going to at least be exposed to our view of this world. I hope it's the right view. And I hope that they turn out to be able to kind of take that baton and pass that on. But those things are different in school now, right? We're taught to be, everybody's the same, and we can't talk about the bad stuff, the ugly stuff. And, I don't believe in that. I don't buy into it. I want them to be exposed to the good, the bad, and the ugly, and then be able to, understand, traditional values and things like that are not necessarily always taught about in the schools anymore.
Yeah, man, I love that. I've kind of had a unique education experience growing up. I've done homeschool, I've done public school, and I've done private school. The most amount of learning and retention I ever received was through homeschooling. I remember when probably elementary school, we were learning about early American history, right? Like we're talking about where the Declaration of Independence was signed in Philadelphia and the Liberty Bell. Well, I remember we actually went there and we were there learning about it, but we were going and doing all these tours. I got to touch the Liberty Bell. I saw where the Continental Congress signed the Constitution. Those are the things that I'll never forget. If you ask me what I learned in 7th grade, 9th grade history class, brother, I can't remember. Yeah. So I love that. And teaching your kids about finances, my goodness, man, they're going to be a step ahead, not just one step, but like 5 steps ahead of everybody else. That's one thing my parents were not good at. They have a great example of a marriage, man, but they did not teach me about finances. My financial literacy course for my parents were, don't get a credit card. And when I asked why, they just said, don't get
just
one.
don't do it. Yeah.
I'm like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
So
no, I love that you guys pray every night, like, and it's consistent. Because honestly, that's people ask me like, how's your foundation so strong? How you have good morals and ethics? Man, every night, man, my dad would call all 5 kids. We have to pray. Each kid prays, and that taught us something that built a foundation. But it's consistency. It's not just, oh, we do it once a week or once a month. I'll do it every night. And the Bible even backs it up, like, teach the children the foundations, the good ethics, good principles. And no matter what happens in life, God always reassuring, reminding them those foundations. So, man, I love that, because a lot of people don't do that. But it's as simple as just praying. Just them praying, them being thankful, them asking questions, open up that door. And that's what teaches a kid, man. So I love that, man. My question doesn't involve kids, but I just have a question for like routine. So I love routines, and you've made millions of dollars. And obviously the way you did your business before that rock bottom, before that pivot, is different from right now. What are some routines that you're doing now that natural entrepreneurs aren't doing? What is something you can say, like wake up early, or give me your routine?
Yeah. I am a huge routine guy, and I'm always hesitant to post it and show a routine, because it got kind of cliche to post your morning routine and everything else, and doing all the things that are popular. And, but I would say that a routine matters. What the routine is doesn't matter as much, as long as you have one that you're consistent with. And I think it revolves around a few different things, right? It revolves around your health. You should have health part of the routine. Whether that's morning workouts, whether that's evening workouts, whether that's lunchtime workouts. I don't personally think that matters. I think every person's a little bit different. I'm a morning guy. I wake up early. I haven't set an alarm in 20 years. And every day I wake up at 5 o'clock, and it's just, I wake up, I do, Teresa and I have a routine that we do coffee together, so we wake up together in the morning. We spend an hour, kids aren't awake, phones aren't ringing, nothing's going on. We don't open the phones, and we just make coffee, and we sit on the couch and we talk, and we have an hour that that's how our day starts.
Awesome.
Ultimately, as soon as that's done, we go work out, and we do every single day we work out. We think that's important to us. So the relationship is part of my routine. That's an important relationship. The most important relationship outside of our relationship with God, right, is my wife and my kids. And so that's important. The health is part of the routine. And then the middle of the day it's work, right? When we get to work, and that middle of the day part of the routine is going to be different for everybody. I'm a very compartmentalized type of a guy. It's got to be on the calendar. I have certain times on my calendar. I do certain things. So every morning at work, I'm working on, I'm building the business. I'm content stuff. It's no meetings. It's anything creative that I'm doing, anything that we need to build. Any strategic planning is in the morning. And then it's really important for me every single day at my business. I have lunch together with my whole team. I buy lunch for everybody, and we do lunch together, because it's important for us to be able to have a relationship, because at work and in business, it's go, go, go. It's meeting. It's everybody doing their tasks, and we don't necessarily always have time to connect. And so that lunch at work is an important routine for us. And then ultimately you finish it off. And then at the end of the day, the end of the day is kind of when our nightly routine kicks in, and that's our relationship with God. That is our daily routine for that. And I think that those 4 things are important to have a routine with, your business, your relationships, your fitness, and your faith. And every day that is my routine to touch on those 3 points. And my morning routine with workouts and everything else, every day is a little different. Some days I do cold plunges, some days I don't. That's beside the point, right? It's saying fit in those 4 things into your daily routine and then be consistent with it. It's interesting, Joel, you mentioned like the prayer. You're the only other guy I've ever heard that their parents were intentional about that with them as a kid. And you remember that your dad calls up and you guys pray together. And my nieces and nephews, they come over and they sleep over at our house, and we have kind of the house that the kids all want to come over and hang out at. And one of the favorite parts about what we do is the nightly prayer. They love it. And they go home and they want their mom and dad to do it. And some of them do, some of them don't, but they and then they'll do it for a little while, or 2 or 3 days after they leave our house for the weekend, and then they don't do it anymore. And then they come over and it's funny how the kids love it, right? And it's not something that we really make a big deal of. We just don't say, hey, listen, we're going to Saturday night prayer. You guys are welcome to join. If you don't want to say something, you can. If you don't have to. You're welcome to do whatever. They all say, they all say all this stuff. And what comes out of kids' mouths when they're praying is pretty awesome. I mean, it's pretty fun when you just allow them to, and when I talk to God, I just talk to God like we're talking today, right? I don't have a lot of structure to it. And I think that it allows them to have permission to do that as well. And it's a pretty fun, that's a pretty fun routine that we have. And for us, as simple as it sounds, that helps us continue to form and bond and build that relationship with God. And that's important for us.
Absolutely. As a family too. Like
as a family group. Yeah.
With God.
Yeah.
Their family.
Yeah.
Man, I love it. My daughter, she's 3. I love hearing her prayers. Sometimes they're just off the wall, but if you ever want to know,
right?
What's that?
It's awesome, right? They're the best. It's the best part of like listening to kids pray. It's one of the funnest things for me.
Yeah, because you get like they're speaking from the heart, but from like a 3-year-old, which is it's a precious thing. Sometimes it's funny. So yeah, I agree. I wanted to talk about short-term rentals. Obviously, that's your niche. That's what you do. You talk a lot about that on your podcast. So, I encourage people to go check out your podcast. The quality is great. Content is great. I've checked out some episodes as well and some clips here and there. But short-term rentals, let's talk about the power of building a short-term rental business. Obviously, you've made millions from it, but why should somebody, that, is looking to be wealthy, pursue short-term rentals outside of maybe other opportunities out there?
Right. One, wealth is hard to build by saving money, right? And so if you really want to build wealth, you don't build wealth by making more money. What you do, you can, like you stack those dollar bills, you got to do something with it, right? It's got to put into action. And that money has to be put into place somewhere. And so you have a lot of different options. You can invest in businesses. You can, I think the best investment is yourself first. Usually, maybe a business, but those are time consuming, and those are, the best return on that investment. A lot of times is just the knowledge it takes to, how are you going to leverage, what you're doing now into something else. And then you have choices to make on asset classes and passive income vehicles. And in my opinion, real estate is the best passive income vehicle for most everyday Americans to build wealth, because it's accessible. You can leverage into it. You don't want to over leverage, but you can borrow for it, and you can put 20% down on something and get a really nice return on a tangible asset. I think most people, they chase other assets, and there's a lot of smart people that understand crypto, and there's other people that understand stocks and commodities and everything else. Real estate is something that is so tangible that you can't really mess up real bad with it, right? Because at the end of the day, it's not going to zero. And so even if you buy something really bad and you make a mistake, you're usually not losing it all, right? It's not speculative because it's so tangible. And so for me, within real estate, there's a whole bunch of different lanes, and I've been investing in real estate for a long time. And I realized there's pros and cons to every different lane, and including short-term rentals. For us, we loved the aspect of short-term rentals because they're single-family homes. You can get good financing on them, and most people can get into them. And you're buying quality assets in quality areas. Most vacation home areas are nice areas, and so you're buying quality assets. You're not buying, homes in, downtown rundown neighborhoods. You're buying them in good areas, which appreciate better, and they hold their value better, and they ultimately can cash flow better. And so there's leverage points when you buy assets over time that build wealth, and where active income gives you the ability to place that active income, start building passive income. And, you do it for 5 or 10 years. And, Joel said, a word a minute ago that I am huge on, and you're consistent with it. And you're not trying to get rich quick overnight. If you have a plan and you start to be consistent and put money into that plan, and if it is a tangible asset like real estate, you get really a lot of leverage points. And all of a sudden you turn around on a property that you might not have really made a whole lot of money cash flow wise on. And you turn around and you say, holy crap, look what we just built. I've got, I'm a millionaire. If I sell this property, I've got $1 million of equity before you know it. And you're most likely not going to save $1 million. Right. And so I've always been a huge fan of real estate. We love helping average Americans, average everyday people figure out the asset class. And sometimes it's not short-term rentals, to be honest, guys. I usually do suggest they get into real estate somewhere, but short-term rentals really work for us. And the fun thing about it along the way is we get to use them, right? They're assets that we get to visit and use all the time. We're trying to find one outside of, in Joel's backyard right there down in the hill country of Texas. But we've got them all over right now, but we get to have these properties that we get to use, but make us money. And then 5 or 10 years from now, they're really big wealth builders, and wealth is different than income. And so they can check both boxes for sure. But a lot of people just focus on the income and they forget about the wealth until they realize it. And then they say, holy crap, and so it's why you see a lot of rich people say, now I'm putting all my money into real estate. I'm really dumping in and buying these assets, because they realize, well, now I can really multiply my wealth by taking some of that income and putting it into tangible assets like real estate.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of tax advantages to hide your money in real estate.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to be able to buy a property. I bought a property 2 years ago in 2022. I paid it for $800,000 for it. I put $162,000 down. It makes me $55,000 a year after all expenses. The gross revenue is about $130,000, but after I pay mortgages, after I pay management companies, after I pay everything, we put $55,000 a year in our pocket. Yet I had a $245,000 write-off the year I bought it and reduced my taxes by $95,000. So depreciation with real estate is something that's pretty fun, because investors that understand it, they call it the eighth wonder of the world for a reason, because you buy these assets, you're making money with them, your wealth is going up. It's worth 1.2 now instead of 800 2 years ago. And so I've got all this equity built. I'm making $55,000 a year in my pocket every single year, yet I get these huge tax write-offs. And by doing that, and it's crazy to be able to understand, like, okay, like, if I make money in my business, I'm not writing. I'm paying tax,
do that in traditional
my business grows, but I can grow a real estate portfolio and actually reduce the taxes I'm paying. It's an amazing wealth building lever, because in all of our lives right now, our biggest expense in our lifetime is going to be taxes. And so we want to, save some of that money from the IRS and put it into building our wealth. It's a pretty fun asset to do it with.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that, man. Wait, like say, because obviously you teach families and other people how to get into that world. So like hypothetically, Joel and I, we come to you and say, hey, Shawn, we want to, start getting into real estate investing. Where does that go? Like onboarding a client, what do you help them identify? What does that process look like?
Yeah, for us, it's really simple. We're going to sit down. Like, we never have anybody say, okay, great, here's how you go invest in short-term rentals. The very first step of the process for us is to really understand where you're at financially, what you want to build, where you want to go. And we try to help bridge that gap. I'll tell you guys, the majority of people don't have an investing problem. They have an income problem. So a lot of times we try to help them with their income so they have enough to invest. There's a lot of people that sell courses and trainings that will take your money when you're sitting on $10,000 in the bank. You're not buying real estate with $10,000 in the bank. And so the best advice is, how do we build that $10,000 up to something else? So sometimes, and more often than not, we're pointing you in the direction, how do we increase our income? And that's not what I charge people for. It's not what we paid, what we get paid to do, but it's the position we want to see people get to where they can start to invest into short-term rentals. Let's say you're in a position to invest in short-term rentals. Now it's making sure you're walking into the game with your eyes wide open and saying, okay, here's the steps we're going to take. Here's the things we're going to have to do to make this happen. Do you have the time to do it? Is that something that you want to be diving into? Because everything that worthwhile takes work, right? And the processes we follow are really simple. We've got thousands of people across the country that do it, and we've got the number one revenue property in 90 markets across the country. That's every major market in the U.S. We've got the number one revenue property, so we know how to do it. It's, do you want to do it, right? Because what I'm going to teach you to do is going to require work, and so we'll have the conversation of, do you want to do that, right? And if the answer to all those is yes, then we just wrap our arms around you. We point you to the process, and we show you the way.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Well, let's pretty much, Go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, if somebody does want to learn our process, I've got a book called What the Hell is a Lifestyle Asset? It's on Amazon. But if you're listening to the podcast here, if you go to vodacy.com/free book, and it's just all one word. So vodacy.com/free book, I'll send you a copy of it. And it tells you all 9 steps of our process, exactly what it takes, what this world looks like. And I'll send you a signed copy for free. I'll pay for shipping. I'll pay for the book, everything. All you have to do is put your name and address in there, where to send the book. And so that might be nice for your listeners. If they want to get a copy of that, go sign up to vodacy.com/free book.
Man, that's awesome. Do that. It's an Amazon bestseller, right?
Yes. Yeah. It's on Amazon. And so, we'll go I'll go activate that link. I didn't even plan on that. So I'll activate that link as soon as we're done with this. As soon as we're done with the recording, I'll make sure that link is pointed in the right spot.
Love that, man. That's a huge tool. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, speaking of tools, so like entrepreneur, you're solving problems, you're helping people, right? But in order to do entrepreneur, you need to be getting sales. Can you give me a couple of nuggets in sales, like that you see like other salesmen make mistakes? What's your process in a way of like, hey, I need to close this client, but I want to help them in a way, but I still need to close this client. What are some nuggets you can give me about sales?
First, so what I tell our sales team is you go in, the number one goal to a sales call is to make sure we're truly pointing somebody in the right direction, right? Make sure that you're there to solve the problem first, and make sure that you're not there to make the sell. You're there to solve their problem. And if we can be a solution to the problem, then we take them down the road of should we sell them. But we always ask for permission too. It's like, hey, listen, you came with this problem. I think we can help you. Are you looking for help? Right. And if they are looking for help, then that gives us permission to say, hey, listen, okay, here's how we think we can help solve the problem. Here's what the process is going to be. And then we share with them, the solution. Some people say, yeah, let's do it right away. Most people, when you're selling something, say, okay, let me think about it. Let me do this. Okay. And so, one of the things that we have that always shared is, and I would tell people this directly. I say, okay, 1, you're not going to think about it. 2, you don't need time to make decisions. You need information. So what information more do you need from me? Right. So 1, it puts it back on us to say, I didn't give you enough information to make the decision. And also give them permission that a no is okay. If the decision is no, let's make the decision. There is no benefit in saying maybe for either one of us. And I talk to them about priorities. Some of the stories that I talk about is my wife has always told me that when I say I'm too busy, I don't have time right now, I don't know if the timing's right. So that's perfectly fine. But I say this before they say it. I tell the story of my wife when I said I don't have time or I'm too busy for something. She looks at me and says, please don't ever say that to me again. She said this years ago. She said, just tell me it's not a priority right now. And so anytime I'm going to say I'm too busy or I don't have time, she said, just do me a favor and never tell me that. You just tell me it's not a priority. Then I know it's not a priority and I won't bug you about it. And there's times when you say, and so when you're in sales and you're talking to somebody and they want something and they say, here's where I'm at, here's where I want to go. And we help them bridge that gap and figure out a solution. And then they will say, no, that's not really what I want to do now. But they do it in different ways. They don't say that's not a priority. They say, it's not a priority to build my business. It's not a priority to make more money. It's not a priority to become a better father. It's not a priority to do whatever. And that's hard to say sometimes. And so you tell them, hey, listen, if it's not a priority, that's okay. But tell me it's not a priority, because if you're telling me it's a priority, I'm going to ask you for permission to help you make a decision, and that's worked well for us. But I think it works well as also because we make sure that we're not there to make the sell. We're there to help find a solution. If we are the best solution, we believe we're better than anybody else in this game. We truly believe that. I don't think that there's anybody teaching this that cares more about their clients than we do. And so because of that, I am very hey, listen, let's make a decision together. I think I'm going to help you better than anybody else is going to help you out there. You have to believe that too. It doesn't matter what I think. I've done this a lot. You have to believe that, but also you have to make it a priority in your life, because I'm not promising you the easy button. And I think for us in sales, when we tell them the road's going to be hard. We tell them they're going to have to put some effort in. We tell them, I'm not pulling you up the hill. I'll walk up the hill with you. I'll put my arm around you, but I'm not going to pull you up the hill. And if you're not willing to walk with me, then this isn't going to work out. You're not going to get out of it what you want. And let's just, we'll agree that we have different views of this world. And giving people permission to say no a lot of times also gives them permission to say yes, and they feel more comfortable. They're like, hey, like we hear all the time, it just feels like a breath of fresh air because you guys weren't hardcore closers. You weren't, and I feel like sometimes we are like we really ask them to make a decision, but we tell them a no is okay, and we just want to know where they're at. And if they need time to think about it, then I need to know what other information they need, right? Because you don't need time to make a decision. The time doesn't help any of us make decisions.
Right.
You either need information or you need to have the guts to say yes or no to something. Right.
Yeah, man, that's good.
That's
really good.
Yeah. That's helpful. That's been helpful for us. And that's what our sales team does. And they close a lot better than industry average. And we hire a lot of sales coaches, and I join a lot of masterminds. And it's funny because we don't do it the way they do it, but it just doesn't feel authentic to us, right?
Yeah.
We just are who we are, and we're gonna run down that road with our view of the world, and it seems to work out for us.
It's amazing.
Well, that's good. That's good to know. Because I mean, honestly, I've talked to a lot of young entrepreneurs. I'm like, man, you got to learn how to sell first before you even start your business. Like, there's nothing's going to come through that keep the business flowing. And so, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, selling all comes down to a belief in yourself. Right? You don't have to sell if you believe you're the best solution to their problem. If you know you are the best and you believe, they're going to believe. People want to be led. People, if you believe that you're going to be the best solution, that when people talk to me, they know damn well that I believe I'm the best. Like they know that, I believe I can help them, and I will show them how I can help them. I'll do anything I can to help them. There's no question in their mind that I believe I can solve the problem. But because of that, because of the conviction we have in ourselves and our process of helping people, they believe it naturally, right? That belief spills over to them. And when they hear that we believe they can do it, that's a lot of times all they need. But if you're in sales, like you said, with young entrepreneurs, one of the biggest problems is sometimes they don't believe in themselves enough. And you have to have that belief in yourself, or you're going to have a really hard time helping people.
Absolutely. I say, dogs smell fear. People smell BS.
Yeah.
And that conviction piece is everything, because, when you walk into a room, we're judging people, right? When you speak to somebody on the phone, we're judging, right? We're looking for the inflections of voice. We're looking for a way out, right? But if that person doesn't give it to us, we're like, okay, yeah, you're different. You talk different. Yeah.
100%.
Go ahead, Joe. No, I have no more questions. I'm thinking about something else now. I'm like, man, I need to add this to my skill set here. So that's all I'm thinking about. But
yeah, Shawn, so you say you do live events. I just want to give you the opportunity to plug what you're doing, plug your podcast, plug your events. Where can people find you? Where can they connect with you?
Love it. I appreciate it, guys. The easiest place is just go to vodacy.com. You can see everything we're doing on there. We have our podcast on there. We have our events on there. We have our books on there. All of those different things that you can get, a lot of resources, some really amazing stories, right? When, we have hundreds and hundreds of success stories on there that you can go listen to people talk about things. And sometimes that's just nice to hear inspirational stories from people that are in your shoes. And so if you go to vodacy.com, pretty simple. And it's the best place to go to kind of find out what we're doing, our view of the world, a lot of resources for a lot of people. And then if you ever want to book a time to chat with us, there's opportunities to do that on there as well.
Absolutely. And you just heard their sales process, so you better come with a yes.
Better be ready. It's hardcore closing on the Vodacy sales time team.
Thank you for sharing everything, man. It was really encouraging. You lead with humility, so that's what I feel like people will see you as confidence, because man, you're not scared, you're not shy about anything. Even your story you shared about like infertility, all that stuff people keep to themselves, but you lead with humility, and I think that's what speaks to yourself, like your character, So thank you for sharing that. It encouraged me. It's going to encourage everyone else too.
Yeah, absolutely, Shawn. I echo that as well. Obviously, getting to meet you and kind of know you over this last weekend. And even in this conversation, you genuinely care. Like you can feel your heart when you speak, when you talk to people. Like that was just one of the things. As soon as we met, like you just felt that, right? And that's such a great place to be, especially when you're serving other people, especially, as a leader at coaching people in the business. That creates that authenticity, that trust is established. So we know you're doing great things and impacting a lot of people's lives. We're excited to continue to see that, man, because people, if you can just provide what you provided for your family, for just the ability to take $100,000 to go buy some kid, right? Just to do that, you're forget wealth, that right there, you're going to live a wealthy life because of that. And so we want to see that, man. I
appreciate it, guys. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you having me on here. Super proud of you guys. Real big fans. Want to see you guys continue. Obviously, we'll be watching from the sidelines. Hopefully, have many more opportunities to have conversations in our mastermind groups and stuff. But you guys are doing some amazing things as well. And this, like there's one of my favorite movies is A Knight's Tale. And one of my favorite scenes in A Knight's Tale is when he's getting hammered with all the, he's in the little thing on stage, and his neck's and his hands are tied up, and all the people in the crowd are throwing fruit at him and rotten vegetables, and his people are like his crew is up there trying to stop him, right? And the king, nobody knew his king, came up and he flipped out his thing. He was going to make him a knight, and he said, if I knew nothing else about you, I know that your people love you. And I saw that from you guys. You had a little crew, people that you invited, people that you had there in Dallas, and all of them very much respected you, looked up to you, appreciated you having them there. The things you're doing on the podcast, it reminds me of that, to say, listen, there's, when you lead by example and you do good things happen, but also the impact you have on other people is a big deal. And in that movie, it was knightly. He got knighted because of it. Right. And so one of my favorite sayings is, if I knew nothing else about you, your people love you. And that is knightly. Right. And so you guys are doing good things, taking steps out there and talking about things that not a lot of people are comfortable talking about sometimes. And, and it's messages that need to be heard. And so I appreciate you allowing me to come on here. I know your listeners, your time's valuable. It's always fun that they would spend that time with us and allow us to have those conversations. So I appreciate it, you guys.
Man, I appreciate those kind words for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
We're just trying to get knighted into the kingdom of heaven. That's the only way.
I think you guys are well on your way.
Absolutely, man. So we always end the podcast with having our guests, pray us out. Is that something that you'd be open to doing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do it, man.
All right. Lord, we'd like to take the opportunity to just thank you for the ability to share our stories, talk with one another, have such an amazing opportunity to be, obviously influenced by you and the other people in our lives. And, on these podcasts, and even having these conversations, learning about one another. And, thanks for the things that you do to look over us, the good, the bad, and some of the challenges in our lives, and being there with us through it all. And that's all we ask. And we ask that you continue to look over those that need some extra blessings beyond ourselves, and continue to bless them with the answers and the light that they need to see as well. And so we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
And we appreciate you doing that. Thank you so much, Shawn, for your time. That was another episode of the CROWNEDCAST. We'll see you next time.
All right, guys. Cheers.